Ladies, time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McDowell. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Secretary Burgum, for being with us today. In the past, you've spoke about the essential role that hunting advocates like the National Wild Turkey Federation and the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and Delta Waterfowl and others play in preserving the outdoors. Can you tell us more about the work that the Department of Interior is doing to partner with these groups to further hunting and conservation efforts?
Well, a great example was last night I had an opportunity to meet with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Foundation, NIFWF, if it's known, one of the most successful organizations in the country in terms of raising private sector dollar, hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And, of course, at their event last night, all of the groups that you described were in attendance, plus many more, including, Everglades, all of these great groups from around the country. And with those groups, one of the things, again, what goes back to permitting, if we have a project that needs to get done, and if it's going to take goes through the federal process, and it's going to take 3 to 4 years at double the cost, where these folks can raise private dollars, put them out to one of these organizations. They can do a conservation project often at half the time and half the price. And so, again, that's super efficient use. And if there's ways, again, where we can do private-public partnerships to support that activity, it's a win-win. It's a win for the taxpayers. It's a win for wildlife. It's a win for conservation.
How important are license revenues that are generated by sportsmen to conservation and habitat restoration efforts nationwide?
It's essential, and I would tell you that as former governor, at both the federal and the state level, whether it's a federal duck stamp or whether it's state licenses or permits that are put out there, that's a key part of that foundation for conservation projects.
So on permitting, what impact do prolonged permitting timelines have on energy prices and domestic manufacturing competitiveness?
And they raise the price of everything and often accomplish nothing.
So can you explain why permitting reform is especially important for critical mineral projects that are tied to defense, semiconductors, and advanced manufacturing?
Well, it's absolutely essential for that, and I think some people get confused. Critical minerals, rare earth minerals. You just have to think about it as, do you own a cell phone? Do you drive a car? Do you look at a flat screen at any point in time during the day? Any of these things that we just take for granted, including your refrigerator and your microwave, will include components that would fit under the 60 identified critical minerals that the USGS puts out as the critical minerals list. And the fact that we don't control them, it is a national security risk, but it also raises the cost, the price of everything, which is why we've just got to get back in our country and to stop demonizing things that we can do well here, cleanly, safely, smartly, and protect the environment, like mining, like forestry, like grazing, like oil and gas production. We can do all of those things without and do it better for the global environment than if we outsourced it to another country. And when we do that, we're going to improve national security and we're going to lower prices. So if you want to champion affordability, then you should be championing permitting reform.
A lot of my colleagues have done something I've found to be interesting. They've chosen to ask you questions and then not given you the opportunity to respond to them. So I'd like to give you the remainder of my time to address any of those questions that you've not been able to answer.
Okay, well, I appreciate. Thank you for doing that. There was a discussion earlier regarding the merger of BOEM and Bessie, or I should say the unification of those two agencies to get more people actually doing the work, which the Congresswoman and I would agree on. We want more inspectors. We want increased safety. We want to do that. The assumption that somehow that this is was going to defer all that. There was in the early report 15 years ago that said there was an issue with the revenue generating component being tied with the regulation. That revenue generation component work is done by a group called Honor with no H, the Office of Natural Resource Revenue. That group, Honor, is still separate. So any potential conflicts of interest between who's collecting royalties, which she mentioned in one of the submitted articles, is not this combination of the people that are actually doing the safety and inspection work, because Again, if we're going to issue a permit to someone, guess what? We need the safety and inspection people out there for exactly the reasons that she described. And those folks work hand in hand today, and we can create additional efficiencies. We can get, our estimate is we can have more inspection and more inspectors with more frequent visitors in off-sort locations if we unify than if we don't. So I think we might all agree on the objective that it's safety and the pejorative, how should I say, assumption or assertion that somehow that the oil and gas industry on or offshore doesn't care or doesn't want the environment. The number one contributor to coastal restoration in America is the Gulf of America energy producers by a long shot, because those are the communities that all their employees live in. They live there. Of course, they want clean water. They want wildlife. They all hunt. And so this idea that that there's some faceless group of people that don't care about the environment, it's just a false. It's an insult to every American who works in the industry. Those are the patriots that are keeping the lights on for everybody here who drove a car to get to work today.
Thank you. Yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair recognizes.
Mr. Chair, may I ask for unanimous consent to submit two things into the record?
You're recognized, Ms. Dexter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first is the White House statement dated July 31st, 2025 on the ballroom, which says the purpose of the ballroom is to solve the president's longing for a large event space on the White House complex that can hold substantially more guests than currently allowed. Has nothing to do with national security. And the second is this article from the Washington Post, April 27, 2026. The top headline reads, "Dinner lacked highest security level." Again, the correspondence dinner shooting wasn't due to the environment, it was the lack of security. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
Without objection, so ordered. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Oregon. Ms. Hoyle, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I represent Oregon's 4th Congressional District, which includes nearly 1 million acres of BLM forest land in southwest Oregon. And Western Oregon snowpack is at an unprecedented low level. Last I checked, we were at 5%. So the fire season is going to be horrific. I have greater concerns and I know it's not your jurisdiction, but FEMA and disaster response has been politicized, and I'm very concerned about how we're going to be able to respond. I would like to be able to get ahead of this, and I met with state and federal fire officials to learn more last week about what we can expect, and they're doing everything they can with the tools that they have. But I am concerned that the administration's cut to agency staffing are leaving us to respond to historically dry conditions with hands tied behind our back. So you said that DOI is on track to be fully staffed at 5,700 firefighters for this year. Is that correct?
I believe that's permanent. There's much more seasonal that would go into that number.
Okay. Yeah, and seasonal would also include some of the red cards that you use, although we have 11% of them that have been dismissed or left DOI. So there's some staffing issues. But
was that last year's number of people that took the early retirement last year?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we're staffing up. We got open recs, hiring, summer hiring, and hiring's going really well this year across parks and across wildland fire.
That's good. Thank you. Now, the 5,700 firefighter number, I believe, is based on the National Fire Management Analysis System. And the last time the department conducted an analysis under that system was in the 90s. And as you well know, I mean, you were governor, fire danger is significantly greater. And I think that we're in a wildfire crisis much greater. And what is the plan to address the discrepancy and add more wildland firefighters than we thought was appropriate in 1990? And I mean permanent staff firefighters.
Well, staffing is one of the components, but of course the other thing I spoke of just not long ago is that this year, because of the extreme conditions, which you and I both agree on, is it's important that we're under full suppression from the get-go, because you don't need, if you find a fire and put it out in the first hours or definitely in the first day, you don't need as many firefighters, where we end up really taxing our resources, flying people around, flying teams from other states is when these giant fires get occurring, and part of that has occurred when we've decided that, we're going to try to let them burn to manage fuel load.
And you and I agree on fire suppression when there's danger.
But I'm saying the faster we put them out, the more efficient we use the resources
I understand.
we have.
We don't disagree on that. So talking about the 11% of DOI's workforce that departed, we lost nearly 200 staff from BLM alone last year in Oregon. In addition to another 200 from other DOI agencies. And I want to know, those people tend to fill gaps on the incident management teams. What are we doing to fill those gaps so that we can be responsive?
Well, I would have to get down at the state-by-state level, but to make sure that we're talking about the same numbers, because some of the people that may show up as not in BLM were also the same thing. Comms, HR, IT folks were unified to the Secretary's office, and then the wildland firefighters were pulled into the separate wildland firefighting. So again, this repetitive thing that we're down a bunch of headcount is they're still there. They're maybe they just counted in different areas.
I have a very short amount of time. I would love to talk to you more about that offline. BLM announced its plan to revise the Western Oregon Resource Management Plan, which covers 2 million acres of Oregon ONC's lands, mostly my district and Cliff Bence's district. And it says BLM is seeking historically higher levels of timber production. Can you be specific about what annual harvest volume you are seeking? And will BLM be planning to make old growth eligible for commercial timber harvest in Western Oregon?
I can't be specific about the number of board feet that you're looking for, because I don't have that level of detail on the top of my head, but would happy to meet with your team and discuss that. Part of this is managing fuel load. Is if we got out of the timber business.
And then what about I'd love to follow up with you on that.
Yep.
What about old growth?
Old growth, I think as a policy, we've been trying to avoid old growth, but we're also have to figure out a way to manage fuel load in that old growth area. And some of these places that where we created wilderness areas to protect old growth actually became their death sentence because we weren't managing fire loads. So I think we got to find the right balance of protecting those old growth forests.
Great. I'm looking forward to working with you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Ladies, time's expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Ezell. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here with us today. I want to touch on a few issues that are especially important to my home state of Mississippi and the Gulf Coast communities that rely on waterage, fisheries, and working coastlines to make a living. Folks back home want to know the federal government is working with the states, not over the states, because the people closest to the land and water usually understand it best. I appreciate this administration's focus on partnerships with state and local communities. Mr. Secretary, one issue I continue to hear about back home involves the aquatic invasive species and efforts to combat the Asian carp throughout the Mississippi River Basin. These programs are very important for protecting fisheries, waterways, and local economy in Mississippi and across the basin. Can you give us an update on the status of FY25, FY26 aquatic invasive species funding, including carp management funding and state aquatic nuisance species plan funding for these basin states?
I would have to say we understand how important it is, but off the top of my head, I don't know the funding status. So if you give an opportunity for my team to connect with you on that topic, we'd love to meet with you.
What are some of the challenges that the department has run into while doing this?
Well, I think that one of the things we talked about earlier was this idea that we are proposing and is in the budget as proposed from the OMB and from the White House is the consolidation of the NOAA the oceanographic team that manages their endangered species list effectively with the one that's managed U.S. Fish and Wildlife, because that's an area where if we had support to consolidate that into one, but that can also help us when we're talking about these invasive aquatic species, which we know can be very damaging to the ecosystems. But we'd love to have your support on that.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure that you're aware of the challenges we've been seeing with the double-breasted cormorant and the impacts they continue to have on our fisheries and aquaculture operations across the Gulf Coast. I've heard directly from producers who are dealing with these issues firsthand. I'm pleased we're finally seeing some movement on this issue, included passage of the cormorant bill, because states need a little more flexibility to respond to the challenges happening on the ground, or in this case, in the water. Can you speak, the Department of DOI is working with the Gulf states. Can you speak a little bit about working with some of our stakeholders and improve coordination and provide a little more flexibility on cormorant managing efforts?
Would say that we're now with our team in place from U.S. Fish and Wildlife. We have a great leader, Brian Nesvik, who is head of Game and Fish in Wyoming. He's built out his team. We've got a great group that's working to try to make sure that we're following the law and that we are cutting red tape, both of those things at the same time. And if there's specific folks from industry that you would recommend that we meet with, happy to talk with them and get their input.
Thank you. I also appreciate the importance the administration has placed on working directly with our states and regional partners instead of relying on one-size-fits-all approach from Washington. How is DOI coordinating with organizations like the Gulf States Marine Fisheries Commission to make sure Gulf states have a strong voice in fisheries and coastal resource discussions? Mississippi and other Gulf states have invested heavily in improving the fisheries science and collecting better regional data, especially when it comes to red snapper and counts and stock assessments. Do you see opportunities for states to continue having a larger role in fisheries data collection and management decisions making moving forward?
Well, absolutely, because as you said in your opening remarks, nobody cares more about the land, the water, the fish, and the data behind all of that than the people that live there, and the opportunity for us to collaborate more with state agencies. As a governor, I had great experience in this. We had the only joint fish hatchery in the country between U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the state of North Dakota, highly successful, great benefit, lowered the cost for the feds, improved the outcomes for the state. We'd love to see more opportunities like that.
10-4. At the end of the day, we all want practical solutions. Strong state partnerships, whether it's invasive species, fisheries management, coastal mapping, or storm preparedness. We need policies that recognize the people closest to the water and the land usually know is best. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentlemen, as time has expired, the gentlelady from New Mexico is recognized.
I would like to offer unanimous consent regarding what the Secretary just mentioned of potentially consolidating the NOAA and Fish and Wildlife programs. I want to just say I'm not opposed to that, but you actually need an act of Congress to do that, and we have not received any congressional language to date, and also it's not reflected in either of the budgets that were submitted for NOAA or for Fish and Wildlife. So I'd like to ask for unanimous consent to enter these into the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you.
The chair recognizes the gentlelady from Arizona, Ms. Grijalva. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Burgum, thank you for being here today. I want to start by reading a statement. True government-to-government partnership requires time, intentionality, and a commitment to collaboration. Do you agree with that statement?
Yes.
Yay, because you made that statement in 2019 while serving as governor of North Dakota during the 23rd Tribal Leaders Summit, where you emphasized progress in state-tribal relationships. You also said at the time, collaboration and partnership aren't just words to us. We're not going into meetings, holding summits to check a box. We're there to do work with you to build on those relationships and partnerships. So those are strong commitments about how government should engage with tribal nations. And I represent Arizona's 7th Congressional District, a district that encompasses 300 miles of the U.S.-Mexico border. 62 of those miles are in the Tohono O'odham Nation. And so I want to turn to the department's responsibility to protect tribal lands and sacred cultural sites. A recent reporting showed that construction related to the administration's second border wall project damaged a roughly 1,000-year-old indigenous archaeological site in Arizona's Cabeza Prieta National Wildlife Refuge. That site, known as Las Playas Intaglio, is culturally significant to the Tohono O'odham Nation, and portions of it were reportedly bulldozed during construction activities. This destruction of the intaglio is not just about losing a piece of history, it's about losing a connection to the land that helped guide generations of O'odham people. Did the DOI conduct consultation with the Tohono O'odham Nation before construction activities move forward in that area? Yes or no?
I would just say that I had a chance to meet with the head of the Customs Border Patrol and with the new Homeland Security Chief, Mark Wayne Mullen. This is a super unfortunate thing that happened. They've both Mark Wayne and the Border Patrol Commissioner, they've both apologized to the tribe. This is just a...
unfortunately, once it's destroyed, you can't undo that. And so would you agree that once that site was destroyed, as much as there's apologies, the damage can't be undone?
Well, it was a portion of the site. You know how long it is and how big it is.
It's about 60%, yeah.
Yeah, well, photographs I saw would have been less, but we're arguing it's still a tragic thing that happened. But the contractor was supposed to start at the other end. There was a series, as it is, there's a series of mistakes that happened along the way, but zero intention. And we've delivered direct apologies, and I think that we're working with the tribe to see whatever we can do, even though it's. That damage has been done. This is something that we're seriously, and I'm personally involved in trying to find out how we can get steps passed forward.
Great. I'm glad to hear that because while we, as an administration, claim to respect tribal sovereignty and tribal heritage, while sacred indigenous sites are being destroyed under federal oversight, many are concerned with the Quito Baquito Spring as possibly being next on the destruction list for Trump's secondary border wall as it gets closer. So will you commit that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and National Park Service avoid Quito Baquito Springs and minimize impact by not using groundwater within 5 miles and monitor those water levels closely as the border wall is being built?
Well, that's a very specific thing that I won't jump ahead and commit to without fully understanding all the complexities, but you can count that we're going to stay close to this issue and make sure. And I know that from talking to to Mark Wayne and to the head of the Border Patrol is that the consultation about any additional work on a secondary border wall is going to be done in consultation with the tribe. And if one of those solutions is to build a single versus a double wall there, then there'll be other remediation that could maybe be done, which achieve both goals: secure the border, but make sure we're protecting those sites.
I think part of the major issue there is that this is part of the secondary one, and that's the worry, especially by that spring. And CPP has made the commitment with Fish and Wildlife, so I just wanted to get your commitment on that as well. And then the Department of Interior, so I'm concerned for the second year in a row now, your budget eliminates dedicated funding for tribal colleges and universities that serve Native students and are often the primary point of access to higher education. So I want to ground that in the story of an individual from my district, Thurman Lynch, who is a D.N.A. student at the Tohono O'odham Community College and is pursuing a biology degree with the goal of becoming a veterinarian. He's overcome a lot of things, would not have been able to do it without them. So did the department conduct an analysis of the economic harm that these cuts are going to make to rural and tribal communities before proposing them?
The answer to that is no, but we have a big issue. We fund two colleges out of Interior, and then we give grants to other tribal colleges around the country. But there are some great examples, including in your home state. Arizona State University has got more has more tribal students than almost any university in the country, and they're doing it without federal subsidy, and they're doing a great job of it. And some of these schools where we're funding on a cost per student, we're way out of whack, and I'm not sure we're giving a high quality experience. So we have to look at how do we find the right solution, and it could partnerships with universities that are committed to the same mission could be really helpful.
Right, and I know my time has expired. I just think BIA-funded schools are achieving record-breaking, like things to brag about, graduation rates of over 90%.
On K-12, absolutely.
So
we're fully committed to K-12, but the two institutions of higher education that we operate, we working with them and working with those that support them, we have to look at because those models are really challenged right now.
So as I know my time has
Ladies,
expired.
time has expired. We're going to move on to...
Mr. Chair?
Can I submit to the record? Do you want me to wait?
Yes.
I can wait.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. I just would like to submit to the record two records. One, that the Honatham Community College thriving as it tries to weather proposed deep cuts to tribal college funding. And then the other out of the North Dakota Monitor, federal cuts would be the death knell for North Dakota tribal colleges, campus presidents say.
Without objection.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Stauber, you're recognized.
I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a research paper from the American Institute of Biological Sciences titled The Challenges of Success, which reports that 50 years ago, gray wolves are in the United States numbered only about 750 individuals confined to northern Minnesota and Iowa, Michigan. Today, there's over 6,000 that occupy suitable habitat across 11 states in the lower 48. That does not include Alaska, which has estimated 7,700 to 11,200 wolves. And I'm entering this into the record on behalf of, because my good friend and colleague from Michigan stated something quite different, and I yield.
Without objection.
Mr. Chairman, another UC.
Ms. Stansberry, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask for unanimous consent to enter into the record the Department of Interior's budget and brief, in which it outlines how K through 12 education for tribes are cut by over $250 million and how secondary education is cut by $105 million. I would hardly call that support for tribal education. Thank you.
Without objection, so ordered. Mr. Vince, you're recognized.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter a document into the record.
Without objection.
The breakdown of this document is a breakdown of the White House's security request related to the East Wing modernization project. There's been some suggestion from the other side of the aisle that this funding will not be used for security purposes, but the official breakdown, which is reflected in this document, makes it clear that this funding will go toward things like hardening the complex with bulletproof glass, drone detection technologies, chemical and other threat filtration detection systems, new secure screenings for visitors in large-scale events, and training Secret Service agents.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Kennedy. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Secretary Burgum, thanks for being here. Every time I listen to you, I'm impressed with your capacity to keep the facts in mind while you apply good policy, and particularly for states like Utah, where 67% of our state is federal lands. We understand better than most the importance of those public lands. They're the foundation of energy production, our grazing economy, outdoor recreation, and the livelihoods of countless rural communities. For too long, many in the West felt locked out of decisions affecting the lands that they know best. I appreciate your department's efforts to restore a more balanced, multiple-use approach to public land management. That includes reopening conversations around responsible energy development, improving access for recreation, supporting grazing communities, and reevaluating a number of Biden-era policies that many Utahns believe prioritize land restriction over practical stewardship. Whether it's energy development, access to roads and trails, or protecting multi-generational ranching, Utah appreciates your Interior Department, your willingness to work with our local communities instead of against them. We're grateful for an approach that prioritizes collaboration over confrontation and recognizes the people who live and work closest to these lands. So, Secretary, travel management plans were originally designed to balance access and conservation as well as multiple use across those federal lands. Many stakeholders argue that travel management planning has evolved into a lengthy bureaucratic exercise that delays access and creates uncertainty without delivering measurable improvements. In your view, are these plans still serving their intended purpose?
I think there's some challenges there. Let me just say that.
Do you see some need for reform, and what would those reforms look like in these travel management plans?
Well, I think that, again, it's hard to, when you look at some of these specifics where the things were actually designed to actually block certain it's always the balance. But were they trying to block the progress, block projects, block some of these things, or were we actually trying to achieve an objective? And I think we just have to make sure we're balancing people, wildlife, economic development when we take a look at these. But be certainly interested in your thoughts on this.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your willingness to consider that, because many of us in Utah struggle with these plans being used to obstruct the natural use of these lands. So if there's ways that we can work with you, and I'm appreciative of your willingness to engage with us in those possible reforms that might be useful. Can you speak about whether the department is evaluating alternatives to the current travel process that would provide more flexibility for counties, recreation users, and grazing interests, and energy development, while also being sensitive to the important natural resource and protecting them in the way that we should?
I think the broad answer there is yes. We're trying to do that because many of these lands are under multi-use, and you can have an overlay plan that was created that wasn't part of the original enacting law on how to use these lands, and suddenly that blocks all of their uses. Again, we have to go back to, again, when we say follow the law, follow the science, and with innovation, I think innovation, we can find solutions to these problems.
Thank you for that. Going to the Great Salt Lake, which is important for us in Utah, and frankly for the Mountain West generally, is the president has proposed an appropriation of approximately $1 billion to support the Great Salt Lake and the surrounding water infrastructure. Can you provide us with any updates on the department's willingness to do that, and how would you distribute or deploy this funding? What requirements would be involved associated with that?
Well, first of all, I'm thrilled to be asked a question about something that is in our budget, because as important as we do need a secure, hardened facility for the executive branch for the next 100 years going forward, the so-called ballroom is not in the interior budget. I just would point that out. But the Great Salt Lake, $1 billion is, and this is an area that's not that well understood in the country, but this is an area that's not part of the Colorado. It's not part of the Mississippi. It's not part of the Columbia. This is a basin that drains into itself. It's got unique challenges. It's been underfunded, and in this entire area is one where if we don't take steps now for the long term, that we could find ourselves in serious challenges. And I think that there's the way that's written right now, it's got some sort of broad directives. But again, it would be spent over a period of time, not in 1 year. It would be done in collaboration, I'm sure, in terms of just like all these water grants. There's state, there's local, other grants that would come into play. But at least it would put into motion the recognition that we've got some long-term challenges in an area that's really important. It's important to recreation. It's important to mineral development. It's important to our population growth, and so I was excited to see that the White House wanted this included in the budget.
Great. We'd love to work with you on how that money is deployed, making sure that it's deployed effectively. The lake effect snow and our ski industry, obviously, and the water needs that I know Montana shares with us is compelling. So, Mr. Chair, thank you for the time, and Secretary Burgum, thank you for being with us. With that, I yield back.